Critic Scott Weinberg of eFilmCritic.com calls this film a limp and nearly invisible female flip on the Police Academy conceit, and he's seen ferns with more personality. Letterboxd user Dan Gorman calls it a hangout, low-stakes, gets-by on charm and casting alone movie. And he re-reviews it a year later, saying, "I don't care that it doesn't make me laugh out loud, I just love watching it." On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of Feds.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters.
Hello, Starfighters.
It's Ruined Childhoods time. It's Ruined Childhoods time. It's Ruined Childhoods time.
What is that? What is
It's
this? What is happening? What's going on now?
I'm going on like 3.5 hours of sleep.
Oh,
so.
okay. I thought you were going to say 3.5 like cups of coffee or something, because that was...
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Nope. 3.5 hours of sleep. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah. Dan,
Happy to be here.
I'm happy for us to be here too. I feel like the past week has just kind of like sizzled by in a way. I feel like that's the best way to put it, because it hasn't been fast, it hasn't been slow, but I feel like there's been just kind of like, I don't know, like a little bit of a surge to it. And maybe that's just me. There's certainly, just a lot going. I don't know if it's just I don't know what it is.
The best, I guess, analogy for the past week or weeks, I would say, is the scene in Twister where with the cows. So
yeah,
we've got cows where you just see
we got cows.
Everything. I gotta go, Julia. We got cows. Yeah. So like everything just kind of spinning and swirling, and
I hear
one
you.
minute there's just a different thing flying past your face.
Yeah.
Every minute, and
yeah. But you know what? Here we are. This is Ruined Childhoods. I'm John. That's Dan. We're talking about some cult and classic movies, though this one really is neither of the above. I don't even know.
It's just kind of excess. It's kind of like if you think of the premise of the movie Twins, where like Danny DeVito is just supposed to be the excess.
Yeah, well, we'll get into it. We'll,
Oh no, I'm just saying. But I feel like Feds is just one of those like remnants from the '80s that doesn't really have a cult. Like a lot of these movies have a cult around
Here's
them.
an interesting thing about Feds, Dan. I think that we're the first podcast in history to talk about it. I like to try to do a little bit of research before, we record these episodes and see if there are people talking about movies like this. I mean, clearly Silence of the Lambs, everybody who has a movie podcast has talked about Silence of the Lambs.
Do people talk about that one? Is that one that people know?
Yeah. They heard of it, and
Yeah.
and Feds in my looking around didn't come up at all. And this is, of course, Feduary, our celebration of the movies featuring the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Yes, be they serious thrillers like Silence of the Lambs, or not,
right?
Like Feds.
And but before we get into Feds, I wanted to share some personal news. Dan, you already know this. I'm telling our audience, but yes. I have recently been offered the position at the Northwest Film Center here in Portland, Oregon, to be the Associate Director of Creative Programs. And the Northwest Film Center has been around since 1971. Yeah, just celebrated its 50th anniversary about a year ago. And in its current iteration, it's been around for about 40 years. I think that it, for the first few years, was, a little different. And, there's been a lot of people who have definitely gotten their start
taking classes there or going to screenings there, like Gus Van Sant is one of them. And Gus Van Sant was actually an awardee in last year's Cinema Unbound Awards, which is an awards ceremony that we put on to honor the people who are kind of making strides and being forward thinking in cinematic storytelling and really thinking outside the bun. And Gus Van Sant was an honoree last year. And I wanted to let everybody know, if you happen to be in the Portland area on March 8th, we are having the 3rd annual Cinema Unbound Awards in person at the Portland Art Museum in one of the ballrooms. And I'm gonna list off the honorees. We've got Carrie Brownstein, Ronaldo Marcus Green, who a lot of people would know. He just directed King Richard. Yeah, we have Arthur Lewis. We have Phil Lord and Chris Miller. I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are probably familiar with the two of them, responsible for the Lego movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. They produced that one. They directed 21 and 22 Jump Street. They are responsible for shows like The Last Man on Earth and Clone High and just a ton of other TV shows. And they just produced The Mitchells versus the Machines on Netflix, which is delightful. Right. Artist and filmmaker Shireen Nishat, who's an Iranian artist and filmmaker, and she has a new movie that's out this year that looks absolutely fantastic. And Roger Ross Williams, who did the movie Life Animated, and it is a documentary filmmaker. And to go along with those honorees, we have presenters. So some of the presenters are Jeff Goldblum and Jeff Goldblum's co-star in Jurassic Park, Will Smith, and Ibram X.
Jurassic Park?
Not Jurassic Park, Independence Day.
Independence Day.
My brain was just going on like autopilot. Ibram X. Kendi is going to be presenting for Roger Ross Williams. Isabella Rossellini, she's presenting for Shireen Nishat. And Tasha Smith is going to be presenting for Arthur Lewis. So it's really, really exciting. If you happen to be in Portland or the Portland area around March 8th, come and check it out. It's going to be a really wild experience. I'm doing a lot of pretty out there things to kind of make this a very different type of award show experience. And I want to let everybody know that they can go to NWFilm, like northwestfilm.org, and get yourself a ticket to come.
And that's the day before John's birthday,
That's
so
true.
bring him a cupcake.
And speaking of delightful treats, Dan, I have one more thing about Silence of the Lambs. Do you think that a single movie has done more to raise the profile of Fava Beans and Chianti?
You know what's funny is it's so funny. I didn't like write that down or anything, but that definitely like crossed my mind more for the fava beans. Really, like I thought I was watching the movie. I was like, I don't think I knew what a fava bean was until I saw this.
I'm sure that most people now associate fava beans with Hannibal Lecter and Chianti. Like, I mean, of course people know Chianti, but the association, the way that he delivers that line, Chianti, like, there's so many iconic lines in the movie. Most of them, Anthony Hopkins. Delivered. Of course, yeah.
You know, I also had one more thing.
Let's hear it.
I had a couple of one more things. So first of all, we kind of missed I think Silence of the Lambs kind of marked our 3 years.
Did it really?
3 years of
Holy cow.
Our first episode premiered January 28th, 2019.
No way.
So
3 years.
Yeah, so three years. Woo,
wow.
And
there, I got the button on the first try.
I was like, where's the sound effect? I'm like, if he's got the sound effect, he's gonna play the sound effect.
I always hit the wrong one. I always hit, and that's the opposite.
That's never the wrong one. Even when it's the wrong one, it's ironically right. So, just kind of wanted to acknowledge that.
That's great.
And yeah. And then my one more thing was imagining a Robert Eggers directed Manhunter starring Robert Pattinson as Graham and Willem Dafoe as Lecter.
Ooh, interesting. Willem Dafoe would be a really good Lecter.
Willem Dafoe.
But the
How
thing
the
is,
hell?
you take one look at him and be like, that guy's not a psychiatrist. He's a cannibal. I wonder who the cannibal is. How about the guy who looks like he would eat people?
Yeah. I'm at Willem Dafoe. I mean, that's a safe bet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Willem Dafoe is so amazing, and I love like one of those. There's like one of those. I don't know if it was like a Facebook thing recently, and it was like, if you could only watch the filmography of one actor for the rest of your life, who would it be? And I swear, one of the first names that crossed my mind was Willem Dafoe, because I'm like, that's you're running the gamut there. You got everything from like fucking The Florida Project to Aquaman, and
Yeah, it's interesting.
Nymphomaniac and Platoon, and
I want to say, my mind first went to somebody like Tom Cruise because you get, of course you get your action movies, but then you get things like Risky Business, you get Magnolia. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of, Eyes Wide Shut.
you get Tropic Thunder.
You get Tropic Thunder. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of interesting things to explore there.
The one that I landed on was John Turturro.
Ooh, John Turturro's a really good one. You get a lot of you get a lot of Cohen in there.
A lot of Cohen, Spike Lee.
Mm-hmm.
You
get Transformers.
You get some Transformers in there too. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's done
There's
a lot, that's for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, part of me also,
man, Willem Dafoe's just like, he's in how many movies each year, and they run the gamut.
Right. I mean, that's the thing, is that you got to think about people who have done,
and he doesn't age.
Well, yes, he does. There have been a lot of pictures of young Willem Dafoe going around recently, and like video clips.
Yeah, but
and
it's
stuff,
like, but there's still.
Yeah.
But there are some facial features that have just like, Streets of Fire. He like, it looks the same.
You know who, another actor who I wouldn't expect to say for something like this, but I think that because he's been in so many different things, I'm also inclined to say somebody like Bruce Willis, because you get, of course, your diehards, but then you also get like Death Becomes Her. You get some Wes Anderson in there. You get The Sixth Sense. Like, there's certainly a lot more.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's really interesting to see the actors who, like, even if they just like dip their toe into like a certain genre, or like worked with a director like once or twice, that's kind of a different thing for them, then it gets pretty interesting.
Well, and it's similar. We talked about Ralph Fiennes. So, Ralph Fiennes working with the Coens and Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
And then
you get Red Dragon.
You get Red Dragon, and then you get Schindler's List. So
yeah. And I talked about it in the last episode, but I'm getting a little bit closer to actually getting that "Would That It Were So Simple" tattoo.
Oh,
I'm thinking about it.
Every time you watch Hail Caesar.
I watched it again the other night, and I watched the clip of that scene the other day. Oh,
it's always puts a smile on my face.
It's perfect. I've got some news things I wanted to mention, stuff that I came across today. We're recording this the day before it comes out, assuming I can get my act together to edit it tomorrow. I've got a busy day. But Dan, do you know what project Liam Neeson and Seth MacFarlane are working on?
Oh, I had heard that Liam Neeson was doing a Philip Marlowe thing with Neil Jordan.
This is
but
not
I don't
what
think
I'm
it's
talking
the same
about.
thing.
I'm talking about them.
Is it a sequel to A Million Ways to Die in the West?
It's Dan. It is. They are in talks of rebooting The Naked Gun. Can you believe that?
You know what, John? Let me tell you something. And maybe it's just because we just mentioned the movie, but I thought to myself, oh God, not Schindler's List.
Oh.
And I think I'd be better with that.
So yeah, the article that I saw was on IndieWire, and it was basically about how this project could either like, you know, could be the end of him doing action movies, because Liam Neeson is like 70 and he's still doing these like Taken type movies. And so he's thinking that it could be like a new start for his career, to be doing this kind of thing. But I don't know how you reboot a parody movie.
Yeah, I mean, I unless it's like a Naked Gun style version of like Taken, like basically that whole Liam Neeson subgenre, the Liam Neeson revenge action thriller
Yeah.
subgenre.
Right.
Like if it was a Naked Gun version of that, like if you imagine like Frank Drebin as the hero in Taken.
Right. So I don't know. I mean, I hope that it falls apart because it just sounds like a really terrible idea. And you know, if you listen to this podcast, you know that we are all about reboots and remakes, but I get really skeptical when it comes to something that's a reboot of a parody. That just doesn't feel right to me. And I also feel like the parody, like the thing that worked about the Naked Gun series of films and also Police Squad is that I think that the time in which they were made, like in the 80s and early 90s, it definitely represented a different type of like cop movie or like cop TV show. And I think that to do something like that today is really dicey.
We talked about it when we talked about Dirty Harry.
Yes.
We talked about the Naked Gun.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So anyway, that's a thing that I guess is circulating. I have one other news thing. Dan, believe it or not, they're talking about doing a modern day reimagining of Jekyll and Hyde, which we have covered on this podcast, believe it or not.
Go figure. How many times have they done a modern day reimagining of Jekyll and
Well,
Hyde?
Dan, take a guess as to who would be the star.
Take a guess.
You'll never guess. You'll never guess. But I want you to.
Bette Midler.
Not as far off than you would think. I'll give you two more guesses.
Let's see, two more guesses. So Bette Midler, Barbara Streisand.
No, you were closer with Bette Midler, I think.
I was closer with Lily Tomlin. No, they're all too old. Sorry.
Okay, Eddie Izzard.
Oh,
yeah, your face just lit up. Bette Midler wasn't a bad guess, though.
No, but I definitely wasn't thinking in the right direction there. But
No.
Eddie Izzard, just because also like Eddie Izzard as an actor, he's done some really good work.
I believe that Eddie Izzard is going with she/her pronouns now.
Oh,
could be mistaken.
I did not get the memo.
I think I read something about it recently, but I think that it's a really fascinating look at the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or just Jekyll and Hyde story, as it were, and to incorporate an actor like Eddie Izzard is a really it definitely tells you what kind of approach it's going to take.
I mean, I'm glad it's someone British,
and it's somebody who's really fascinating and has been very fascinating for a long time. And I'd say like hasn't been as present lately. You know, I feel like the early 2000s were definitely more of like a time where I was hearing a lot about Eddie Izzard. And
Dressed to Kill.
Dressed to Kill was
like
huge.
right
and you know, you see Eddie Izzard pop up in Ocean's 12? One of the Ocean's movies. But certainly not like in any starring roles, at least to my knowledge.
I remember she was in, and yeah, correct. She was in the movie called The Cat's Meow, which was about. It kind of came up a little bit when Mank was a thing, and Because oh god, what's her face? The person that Amanda Seyfried plays in Mank, Kirsten
Oh,
Dunst played her in The
yeah.
Cat's Meow, and it's like it's like all these like William Randolph Hearst has on like a boat, and
Gotcha.
Eddie Izzard played Charlie Chaplin.
Huh. Okay.
It's worth checking out. I'll check if it's streaming anywhere. But yeah, the Cat's Meow really Peter Bogdanovich made it.
Oh,
Actually.
really? Cool.
Yeah. So definitely a good one. Especially if you're checking out Bogdanovich's work, as he passed not too long ago.
Yeah.
Definitely worth adding to the queue, so to
Yeah.
speak.
No, that sounds good.
So let's see. The Cat's Meow. All that keeps coming up is cats. No, Cat's Meow is not. It's on Tubi and
Oh.
IMDb TV.
Okay.
So
There you go.
there's that.
So there's that. Dan, did you have any news bits you wanted to bring up, or should we move on to Feds?
I'm excited to move on to Feds and hear a synopsis.
Oh, yeah.
Feds.
Okay. Okay, this is the point where we're just going to like break right into it. All right. So, in this niche version of The Odd Couple, two female trainees attempting to become FBI special agents need to work together to help each other through the program, despite the odds being stacked against them. Ellie DeWitt is a former military badass who has a hard time with academic learning, and Janice Zuckerman has the opposite problem. She's an absolute bookworm, but she isn't very assertive when it comes to physical force. They help each other come out of their shells and prove their worth as exemplary agents, despite all of the odds being stacked against them. That's my synopsis. I certainly...
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, everything else is just like set pieces to move things forward, but that's essentially it. If you are... Hey, we talked about 21 Jump Street. This entire movie is the montage at the beginning of 21 Jump Street when they like help each other become better in the police academy program. So Rebecca De Mornay is Ellie DeWitt. Mary Gross is Janice Zuckerman. And then the only other person you might recognize is Fred Thompson as the like FBI like main dude, I guess.
He's the trainee.
Yeah.
He's like this training
The supervisor, yeah. You have Larry Cedar as Howard Butts, the bizarro counterpart to our father, Howard Weiner. And then we have Ken Marshall as Brent Shepard, who's like a multi-generational FBI agent who is just like, it's kind of weird because Ellie has like a crush on him, but he's clearly just a total douche. And
Yeah.
I don't know, there's like zero redeeming quality to him. So
it doesn't go anywhere.
no, and but this movie is it's fun. It's definitely looked at as being one of those like post police academy, like, hey, what else can we do with this kind of thing? But it definitely is just like, all right, well, let's just kind of get the people there and then we'll figure it out as we go along.
That's a really good way of putting it. I would say the most enjoyment factor out of watching it was just that it was one of those, like, it was an 80s movie, so it felt very comfortable
Yes.
to watch. What I would like to do here, John, I would like to read word for word the entire review of Feds published in the New York Times, October 29th, 1988, by Janet Maslin, because it's not as much a review of the movie as it is a documentation of her experience seeing the movie.
Okay.
So, Feds, a comedy starring Mary Gross and Rebecca De Mornay as two FBI agents in training, opened yesterday at the Criterion Center and other theaters. The Criterion was not the best place to see it, however. The theater advertised a 12:40 p.m. show, but patrons arriving at that time found the film had already begun. Very little seemed to have happened. Miss Gross and Miss De Mornay were seen going shopping together, sitting through classes, fraternizing with fellow students, and mastering such tactics as wielding guns, slapping on handcuffs, and kneeing antagonists in the groin. Then at 1:25, the film ended. The audience marched down to the lobby. And by the way, sorry, I read that then at 1:25, the film ended. I thought that was the end of the review,
Yeah.
and I was like, genius.
Yeah.
But there's more, and it's worth it. The audience marched down to the lobby where it was told that the projectionist had misread his schedule and had started the film 40 minutes early. The next show would not be until 2:30. A ticket taker assured irate patrons that if they went back upstairs, the film would begin again at 1:30. By 1:45, it was clear this was not to be. The audience returned to the lobby where a manager appeared and declared there would be no show before 2:30 after all. At 1:50, it was suggested that the projectionist show the first half hour of the film, then rewind it for the 2:30 show. He said that this was impossible. Refunds appeared to be the only solution. By 2, the patrons had formed a long line and were beginning to receive their money back. At that point, I left. The film, now, again,
Okay.
had it ended there.
Had it
Wonderful.
ended there.
The film itself seemed amiably innocuous, no more or less gripping than the average training manual. Miss Gross and Miss de Mornay appeared to have a friendly rapport. Miss Gross in particular sounded mildly funny as she told offenders they were under arrest in that high, wispy voice of hers. Fred Dalton Thompson was also good as the students' gruff, laconic instructor, at one point summoning them in the middle of the night for a training exercise in which he would play a terrorist, take a hostage, and be hunted down by teams of students. Not until 1:24 or so when the chase concluded, not until an hour and 24 minutes or so when the chase concluded, was it evident that this was meant to be the film's exciting climactic episode. Feds will no doubt be available on videocassette very soon. And that is the end.
Okay, I have one question for you, Dan.
Yes.
Is Janet Maslin my new favorite writer, period? Question mark?
And did she become so with a non-review of Feds?
I think that that's amazing.
Yes.
And honestly, it's like, how do you really review a movie like this? Because it's just like, all right, look, if you're really going to just review it at face value, it's just not going to be interesting at all. But if you talk about your experience, like the wild experience of watching Feds, then yes, absolutely very interesting.
Right. But it's funny that it's like it's all of this over Feds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I remember going to the movies once in New York and, like, there was a projection issue with, like, Inception, and we had to come back for a later showing. But that was Inception.
Yeah, no, Feds. Feds is Feds. And, you know, I agree with her. I remember watching this as a kid over and over again. It must have just been on.
Really?
It must have been. Well, yeah, I think it was just like on some cable channel, and it was probably cheap for them to get, and they just showed it all the time. And I remember Mary Gross and loving her character. She was so, I don't know, just like enjoyable for like the young me. Like that's exactly what like I found funny. And there's a lot of funny things. I mean, I certainly didn't understand a lot of what was going on, especially when she like gets drunk and is like trying to pick up the guy at that bar. But it was,
that part was hilarious.
yeah, it's enjoyable nonetheless.
Sorry, hilarious in context.
Yeah, in context. But you know, and then of course there's like a clothing trying on montage, which feels just very much just like you're not doing yourself any favors if you're trying to be like a kind of a feminist movie. You're just hurting yourself by having there be this kind of hysteria over clothes.
Well, it's interesting that you say that about trying to be a feminist movie, because I feel like it very much was like an opportunity to,
Sure.
as Silence of the Lambs was,
Yeah.
but I don't think they necessarily tried to be a feminist movie. It feels like it was a bunch of, I don't know, we got this script, we got this going on here. They probably like just slapped a director onto it and we're like, here,
This is
go
the
make
only
this
movie this director has ever done.
I mean, was he done a lot of TV?
I think directing, this might be the only thing that they've ever directed.
Like-
Directed by Daniel Goldberg, written by Daniel Goldberg and Len Blum.
So he co-wrote it, yeah.
Yeah, so Daniel Goldberg, let's see, director. So let's see, produced a lot of movies, like definitely worked with Todd Phillips a lot. So the Hangover movies, Due Date, School for Scoundrels, Old School. Then you go back and then you've got producer for Stripes and Meatballs and stuff like that.
Oh, because this was an Ivan Reitman
Yes.
production. Yes, it had a very Ivan Reitman-y score.
Yeah, well, a couple things about the score, actually. The score, which was by Randy Edelman, is definitely a score that I'm very familiar with because I own 3 copies of this soundtrack on vinyl.
What?
I believe that
What?
I believe that I used to have more of them. I think I went to like Amoeba or something and I found just like a pile of like Feds soundtracks on vinyl and I bought all of them.
And this has not come up once.
Yeah.
I had no idea you had this connection to this movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let me see if I have a picture of it. I'll post it onto well, I mean, I could always take a picture of them, but definitely post it to the Ruined Childhoods Instagram account at Ruined Childhoods Pod. And here I'm just gonna show you over the.
Yeah, sure enough.
Yep. And
Those are 3. They look in good condition too.
I doubt that any of them have ever met the needle of a turntable. So yeah, Randy.
What, you don't think they were owned by people who just like would sit there for hours and smoke weed and listen to the Feds soundtrack and break down every chord change?
Right. So to be clear, Randy Edelman also worked with Ivan Reitman on Ghostbusters 2, Twins, and Kindergarten Cop.
I was gonna say it sounded like it had the Kindergarten Cop-ish,
which is a very familiar feel.
90s family comedy.
Yeah. He also did or contributed to, I should say, Beethoven, Last of the Mohicans, The Mask, Gettysburg, My Cousin Vinny, While You Were Sleeping, 6 Days, 7 Nights, Shanghai Noon, Billy Madison, Angels in the Outfield, Ed TV. Yeah, so
Randy Edelman worked in the 90s.
Oh, yeah. He is living comfortably, assuming he's still
80s,
alive.
Yeah.
Looks like it. From Patterson, New Jersey.
Nice.
Set piece of the movie Patterson by Jim Jarmusch.
Delightful.
Starring Adam Driver as a bus driver.
Adam Driver as a bus driver in the movie.
It's like, who do we get to play this
Patterson.
driver? How about Adam Driver? Mini Driver was busy.
Mini Driver was busy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, they needed a bigger driver for a bus.
That's true. That is very true.
Not a mini driver.
Yeah, you need a maxi driver, and that's when you get yourself Adam Driver.
Oh.
So,
yes.
Anyway, so back to Feds. So, there's funny moments. The action to it is not very action packed. It's just more like clever.
Well,
I don't know.
It's just very it's a very formulaic.
Yeah.
Okay, now we have the scene where the recruits try to act like they're real FBI agents.
Yeah.
And they do this, and then we have it's very formula, kind of buddy like training, police academy-esque.
Right, and they keep on doing the same thing over and over again. The same kind of jokes over and over again. And it's a perfect movie to have on in the background while you're doing something else.
I don't know if it's the perfect movie to have
I don't
on
know
in the
the perfect
background while
movie,
you're
but
doing
like
something.
if you want to put something on that you do not have to pay attention to, this is certainly
it's
up there.
fine, and it's like, is it even 90 minutes? Like,
I doubt it.
It just, I think it just hits that mark, and
it is exactly 90 minutes, Dan.
which is what this movie should be.
Yeah.
And that, like, I worry. It's the type of thing where, like, if they made it today, it would be 2 hours and 10 minutes, and there'd be like just long, elaborate chase sequences.
Well, might have made it better if there were some actual chase sequences. So
it might have made it better if there was like a story or like the conflict was really just. But even the conflict probably should have been the sexism in the FBI in the 80s.
Yeah.
But even that, it was more of just like the conflict was their own like skill sets
sure.
and the limitations of
Yeah.
them.
And that's why I was saying, like, I was watching this entire movie, and the entire plot of this movie, minus the, the sexism and misogyny that's part of this, is accomplished in a like 2-minute montage tops in 21 Jump Street, where one of them is like, getting an A on a test, the other one gets an F, and he's like, hey, you're pretty good at this, huh? And the other one is like really good at shooting a gun, and he's like, hey, you're pretty good at this, huh? And then they become best friends, and they graduate.
Yeah. But and then and then that's it, and then we have the rest of the movie. So
and then you have the rest of a really fun movie.
Yeah. I mean, but also you could look at like the Stripes setup,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Which to me is like the Stripes to me it's like the comedic Full Metal Jacket. In that the training sequence is so much more engaging and fun. I mean, well, not that any of Full Metal Jacket is really fun, but
right.
The training sequence is the highlight. It's the part of the movie that's more memorable, whereas the rest of it, and I have to say, like, the second half of Full Metal Jacket has definitely appreciated in value in my eyes. Like, not that I was never like,
I barely remember it.
Stanley Kubrick, what a hack. No, he's my favorite director of film. And so Stripes to me was very much like, the training part was so funny, and there's all this stuff in like John Candy mud wrestling and all that. And like, Sergeant Hulka getting blown out of the tower. And then there's the rest of the movie that's just like, this is there because we felt it needed to be there.
Right.
But Feds could have used something like that, or something like in like Police Academy, the whole standoff with the riot. Because the thing you have is you really don't have any villains in these movies.
No, the villain in this movie really is just the Brent Shepard character, the asshole who, at the end of it, he's like applauding for them as they get their like special award, which, by the way, they are giving out those diplomas in no real order. They're like going in reverse call sheet order. And and where, the second to last is Mary Gross, and then the last is Rebecca De Mornay. And it's just like, wait a second. Mary Gross's last name is Zuckerman. Literally would be the last person to be in any alphabetical order anywhere.
Most like unless Alan Zweibel is there.
Yeah.
I was like,
that would be like, I'd like to see those two in an alphabetical order lineup.
And you know what? Oh, I thought it was fun, I guess, just because following up on all the Silence of the Lambs stuff. That there was one of the recruits' name was Graham, and I was like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if that was Will Graham?
Yeah. And it's funny because this Feds and Silence of the Lambs end in a very similar way, where it's like them getting their like special agent, badge and all that kind of stuff, except for Zuckerman doesn't get a call from Hannibal Lecter in like Argentina or wherever he's supposed to be. Would have been great. I mean, this does predate Silence of the Lambs by a few years, but like
it does.
If I could do like a recut of this movie, I'd keep it exactly the same, except at the end, Janice Zuckerman gets a call from Hannibal Lecter, who's gonna
Janice,
who's gonna eat Anthony Heald.
There's Fred Brent. having an old friend for dinner.
Yeah, it's like,
Uh,
sorry, I think you have the wrong number.
Do you think that they were trying with her character to kind of capture the magic
Hooks.
of Hooks from Police Academy?
100%. I
Yeah.
mean, so Mary Gross, she was on Saturday Night Live, and she has this way about her, and it's effective, but it's kind of like it's a one note kind of situation. And like I said, watching it as a kid, like it worked for me. I enjoyed that type of character. I don't think that I really ever identified with like the Marine on screen. It was always the weirdo. That's who I always, attached myself onto.
Well, and as I don't know about for you, but for me, being a Jewish kid, you don't see as many Jewish characters and things. As soon as a character had even a Jewish sounding name, it was like, okay, all right, that's I'm in your corner.
That's a good point too. I hadn't really considered that. I don't think that was something that really was a factor for me as much as like if there was a character named Jonathan, I was always like, oh, tell me more about this Jonathan character. That's my name. There just weren't as many of them, I think. Whereas
I'm trying to think of characters named Jonathan. I'm drawing
yeah,
a
or
blank at the
like
moment.
actors like Jonathan Silverman or something
Jonathan
like that.
Price. Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
Jonathan Silverman was too for a Jonathan with a
There you
Jewish sounding name.
That's true.
So-
Appeals to everybody in our family.
Oh yeah, big Jonathan Silverman fans. And also he did Brighton Beach Memoirs. So like once you do a Neil Simon, once you do especially part of the Brighton Beach trilogy,
That's the hat trick right there. So but and Rebecca De Mornay, prior to this, Risky Business was kind of the big one. I don't know if she was in anything that was like big.
Runaway Train,
Yeah.
not the Soul Asylum song, but no, Runaway Train was Eric Roberts and John Voight.
Runaway Train. Yeah, Eric Roberts, John Voight. Yeah. TK Carter was also in that. I'm a big TK Carter fan.
Oh, okay, yeah, definitely. I've never actually seen Runaway Train, and it's kind of I'm like John Voight these days.
Oh yeah, no, totally. But I mean, even Runaway Train wasn't that huge.
No,
I mean, not to say that Feds was huge, but like it wasn't until Backdraft, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, that Rebecca De Mornay was kind of like back in it.
Yeah, I guess it was Backdraft, and then she did Three Musketeers. That was
Right.
after Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Yeah.
Hand That Rocks the Cradle is a good movie.
I haven't watched it in a long time. I need to do it again.
It's
I need to do that
movie.
again. I need to watch that.
But
again.
yeah, so The Slugger's Wife.
See, I don't know that one.
That was another one. Yeah, that was it. Was in Neil Simon.
Neil Simon,
Hey.
yeah, Hal Ashby,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and
there's
Randy
that, but then,
Quaid,
yeah.
Michael O'Keefe, Randy Quaid, interesting.
But yeah, she didn't really. Yeah, her career kind of. Oh right, and she played Wendy in the miniseries version of The Shining. That was.
Oh, really?
It was more true to the
Yeah.
book. Like Wendy in the book is much more a Rebecca De Mornay than a Shelley Duvall.
And she was also in Wedding Crashers.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, so she's been around. But yeah, I mean, like coming off of like starting your entire career essentially with Risky Business is kind of like where do you go from there? Dan, your jaw is dropped. What's going on?
Oh yeah, no, because I'm on her Wikipedia page, and I didn't know that she was with Harry Dean Stanton. At
Really?
a certain point, like in the early '80s. Yes, Jiminy Glick.
Really? Wonderful.
Harry Dean Stanton.
I was telling a friend about Jiminy Glick recently who did not know about this character, and it was just like, oh, wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Because then you get to
Like-
dig up all the clips.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's the best. But yeah, so no, Rebecca De Mornay. Yeah, I guess this could have been bigger for her. But
yeah, I mean, this
she-
is a big starring role in
I feel like
what
she was
could have
already
been.
big, like when Backdraft came around. And
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think that we've kind of talked enough about this movie. I mean, let's see. We've probably been talking about it for
half of its running
time, and I think that Janet Maslin would appreciate us moving along. So, Dan, given the opportunity, or maybe being forced at gunpoint to do something with this movie, what would you do?
Well, let's see. So first of all, let's acknowledge that the end of it does set it up for a sequel because they get their assignments, and Janice and DeWitt both get assigned to Los Angeles.
Right. So,
which would then make it, more plausible that half of the scenes look like they are being shot in Los Angeles.
Right.
So by half, I mean all. I would not go with a sequel. I would go with just a straight up remake. And I don't know if I would potentially set it like in the 80s. I feel like that kind of makes more sense. Not that like sexism and misogyny is a forgotten thing of the past. But I feel like filming it and maybe showing it as maybe setting it up as more of an action comedy and setting it up as, kind of that like, the 1980s were still a time when, the 1980s were a time when women in law enforcement were even more like challenged and fewer and farther apart. And how these two are gonna shatter the glass ceiling, and that's the part in the trailer where you cut to them like crashing through a plate glass ceiling.
Well, they did bust through a window.
The window,
yeah.
So, but kind of setting it up like that, almost as a like more of a 9 to 5 type of movie.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking of I was like, who would I like to see in a kind of looser remake of this? I thought Beanie Feldstein would be magnificent. I don't think it would need to be a straight up remake where you would have a Zuckerman and DeWitt specifically. So I just thought, like, let's take that whole Odd Couple buddy cop idea and pair them up. And I think about Booksmart, which was which kind of relied on that same chemistry. And I think about comedy, and I think about what a movie like this needs, and that was who came to mind for this.
Okay.
A Beanie Feldstein starring...
We like Beanie Feldstein.
A loose Feds remake. I really don't see any point in keeping much from the original. Like, not even the names.
No, yeah. I mean, even the moments that are memorable, and I say that, like, with all of the air quotes in the world, is that it's like them stomping the feet and kicking in the balls and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, I feel like we're past that. I feel like, that's kind of just reinforcing the weak woman stereotype, because like you also have the character of Howard Butts, and it's like, he doesn't look like the strongest guy in the world. He's struggling when they're doing pull-ups at the beginning. Like, how come we don't see him struggling trying to handcuff somebody? So anyway.
So you would do a spinoff about Howard Butts?
Yes, I would. Here's how it would go. So as we know at the very end, Howard Butts is sent to Duluth. Dan, what prestige television series could possibly take place in Duluth?
I don't know. Could it be Fargo?
That's right. So we tie the Fargo and Feds universes together by having a Howard, FBI field office director Howard Butts involved in a Fargo storyline.
And that's great, and that would probably that could take place around 1990. I don't think they've done a season around that. They jump around in time.
Yeah.
I feel like they haven't done a late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah,
season.
see 70s. Yeah,
40s, 1950 or 40s.
But yeah, I mean, that's honestly, Dan, I am so glad that you teed things up with the Howard Butts spinoff.
I had how surprised was I when you just picked that up and ran with it there.
But that's the thing is it's like, first of all, for anybody who listens to this podcast with any type of regularity, you know that we are big time appreciators of the television series Fargo. The exception to the rule that taking a Coen brothers or any type of auteur based movie and translating it to television, that just doesn't work, except for Fargo. And
they made it work.
They figured, Noah Hawley figured it out, and I don't know what any plans are for future seasons of that show, but all I'm going to say is get your asses in Duluth, get Howard Butts in there to be their kind of FBI contact, and tie these universes together.
And who would you have play Howard Butts?
Ooh, that's a good question. I guess it really depends on what era you're going for. I don't think that Howard Butts would be the central character, but would certainly be somebody who would make an appearance. Yeah, I mean, kind of, let's see, wiry, skinny, sharp, noticeable features. I'm trying to think
what about Paul Scheer?
I don't think so. No, because Paul Scheer, I feel like, has such a distinctive look that he needs to just be his own different character.
Okay.
But yeah, I really don't know. I am actually, I think about this person when I think about Mary Gross, but I'd love to see, I know exactly who would be Howard Butts. Neil Campbell. Neil Campbell is he's a writer. He's I think one of the head writers for Brooklyn Nine-Nine or was, and has also made appearances in things. But one of his old partners in sketch comedy was the person I think of a lot of when I think of Mary Gross, who's Paul Rust. And I feel like you're nodding at me, and I'm assuming you're looking at a picture of Neil Campbell.
Yes.
Yeah, he could pull it off. He works. Yeah, the blonde. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
You see what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, so that
very,
would be
very funny guy.
So that would be a great
that's off
season
that's off the top of the dome. I'm not saying that Howard Butts would be the central character. I'm saying that this is the next step of the Howard Butts storyline, but would he be seen from from other perspectives?
Kind of like the Oliphant character in the last season.
Kind of, yeah. But and also it would be kind of great if he goes to Duluth and immediately gets killed or something.
Oh,
he's like, I just need to consult with some of my friends over in the LA office. Yeah. And then he gets killed.
That would be good. All right. No.
Well,
Howard Butts.
Dan, yes. As we've been telling people this year, what we're doing is we are not putting in our show notes what the next episode is going to be. We're trying to pepper in the title of our next movie into the body of the show, and I was able to get one in.
I totally forgot. I totally forgot to do it, and it would have been so...
It's a hard one to get in there.
Really? Is it? Because I'm pretty sure that there were a lot of points that we could have made, and I'm thinking about now something that you said earlier.
Something that I said earlier.
My point, and I don't know where we got the other part.
Well, let's just break right into the...
We just take a break?
No, we're not taking a break. Let's just break right into you telling everybody what we're going to be covering on the next episode.
Yes, on our next episode, the FBI is going to pay us to learn how to surf. It's Point Break. We will dive into the 1991 Catherine Bigelow directed classic starring Patrick Swayze, Keanu Reeves, and Lori Petty. And perhaps I may delve for the first time into the 2015 remake.
I'm going to save my thoughts on the remake for the next episode. But yeah, Dan, as you are chasing some bank robbers down the streets of, and I say this in quotes, the DC area, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.